What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Knowledge Heist podcast. As always, your host, Luis Fausto. Today, I am lucky and fortunate enough to have this gentleman on my screen today. Wish I was physically interviewing you, bro.
All
But
good, bro.
he's releasing a book on Tuesday. It's been a long time coming for this one. I've seen the journey from step one, the drafts on Instagram Live or on Instagram stories, your posts, your tips,
Hmm.
what you're gonna, put in this book, why you wrote this book. So I'm finally, I'm honored to have you on the show, man. So go ahead and introduce yourself, bro. Thank you for coming.
Of course, man. What's going on, everybody? Super stoked to be on the show. So I appreciate you for giving me the space. A little bit about myself. My name is Verduzco. Actually, my full name is Ismael Verduzco el Tercero.
Nice.
I'm Mexican American, born and raised in Los Angeles and all throughout Southern California. So I've lived in like Pomona, Rancho Cucamonga. I've lived out in like Riverside. Um, I went to school in Claremont for a little bit, like middle school. So I've been around. I've been around the block, Southgate. So if you're from like the LA area too,
Yeah.
East LA, like West LA, all that. So I've been all throughout Southern California. I attended college, UC Merced. It's a really small school.
Yeah.
And I'm also a DJ. I have a podcast. I like to stay busy, basically. So if this is your first time you guys are learning about me, definitely check my stuff out. I like to push out a lot of content. And I guess the last thing to mention is I work in tech. So
Yes.
I currently work at Snapchat, and I previously worked at LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I'm out here repping for us,
Yes, bro, and I love that. I love that because you're very outspoken about the culture and underrepresented communities in the tech space, right? And any space really, because you say you're a DJ, you're in the tech, you like to stay busy, and sometimes we don't stand out from the crowd, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, bro. Once again, thank you for being here. I'm asking you questions where I want to learn from you, and obviously the people going to listen to this are going to learn from it as well. So, I like to start with your upbringing, man. I know you have siblings. How was it growing up? Who was Ish growing up? And how did he evolve to become the person he is today?
That's a great question, man. So my upbringing, I wouldn't say my upbringing was like nice. It wasn't like horrible or bad. I interviewed my mom recently, like maybe a couple years ago, because I really wanted to learn about what my life was like growing up, because I feel like sometimes when you're growing up you block out certain things, or you don't fully remember, or if like times are bad, you don't really know that things are bad because it's just normal.
Correct.
So I interviewed my mom recently and my grandma recently, and I put out a post a couple of years ago on LinkedIn, and that the post title was East LA to LinkedIn, like basically here's my journey.
Correct.
And so I learned a lot about like my upbringing that I didn't fully like grasp, like I mentioned. So I moved around a ton growing up. I moved, I think it was 12 times by the time I hit high school.
Oh
So I've
wow.
lived in like small apartments. I've lived in like me and my mom had me at 19. I think she was 19 or just before she turned 20. So raised by very young parents, extremely fortunate for like how hard they worked their asses off, especially
Definitely.
my mom.
Yeah.
Like she went back to work like 2 weeks after she had me. My grandma
Wow.
had both of my grandmas from each side of my family had to like pitch in and be able to help out to like raise me, ensure that I grew up as a good kid. But we didn't really have like really glamorous things, like
Correct.
I mentioned it on the back of the book. That like through a rough period of my life, it was like living in an apartment, really small apartment, and like luxuries consisted of having like running air conditioning during the summer, and like
Mm,
maybe going to McDonald's like once or twice a month if you're good after church or something. But like
correct.
we didn't have like it's weird for me like working in tech and
Yeah.
seeing how other people
Hmm.
have like grown up and contrasting with my experience growing up. It's like I wouldn't say that we were poor, but we definitely weren't like living lavishly. With
Correct.
we lived off of WIC, we lived off of like food
Hmm.
stamps for a period of time. But yeah, like my upbringing was like it's what shaped me to be the person that I am today. And
Correct.
it's given me the perspective that I have now working in tech, this like glamorous, like fast paced job.
Hmm.
But then I'm able to like pull from my personal experience growing up. I always have
Exactly.
that perspective to like to keep me in check no matter what.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
So, yeah, man, that's I think is very crucial. At the adversity, right?
yeah,
So, do
exactly.
do, do you speak upon adversity in the book?
Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit. I mean, I talk about that all the time too. Like
Definitely.
one of my mission statement is essentially like I'm paraphrasing it, but
Yeah.
it's essentially to like continuously overcome adversity
Yeah.
and show other people that they can achieve their goals too.
Yes.
So
Okay.
when you think about the book, when you think about the podcast, the social media content, when you think about like
Hmm.
the one-on-one conversations that I have with people, all of that like is leading up to that mission statement in terms of like, I'm going to show you the shit that I've gone through. I'm going to show you what I'm going through. I'm going to show you that it's not easy. I'm going to show you that I'm not
Correct.
perfect, and I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to
Right.
overcome everybody that tells me that I can't do it.
Correct.
Um, just before this call, I put up a post on Instagram that pretty much outlined and said like, yo, I could have gotten a publisher to help me write the book. I
Yeah.
could have gotten a publisher to like do the marketing. I could have got the publisher to do all the editing and all, basically
Correct.
pretty much write it for me. But that's not who I am. That's not like
Yeah.
the upbringing that I was raised. I was raised as the underdog. I was
Correct.
raised as a like, put it on your back, bootstraps, and like and get
Yeah.
it done, you know?
Yeah.
So that kind of like gives you more of an idea as like to who I am,
Okay.
and how I like how I take on different things in my life. Like in terms of DJing, I never had like a professional booking agent, but I
That's
still went
fine.
on a US tour, and I landed a gig in Vegas, you know. So it's like I like
Yes.
to defy the odds, and
Yeah, man. Yeah.
just try to do like really really amazing things,
Correct.
but on my terms, not like somebody else telling me that this is how you're gonna do it and I'm gonna like take your full cut and like
Correct.
um
Correct.
it's very untraditional, very untraditional routes for things.
Yeah, no, I agree, man, and I like the way you speak about it because when someone says like on my own terms, sometimes it could come off as like, oh, so you don't listen to anybody else, and
Yeah.
it's not exactly that you don't listen to anyone else, but you're creating your own pathway
Yeah.
without not necessarily asking for help, but you're doing it because you have that grit, you have the resilience, and you
Hmm.
have the work ethic, right? And that's one
Exactly.
thing, bro. That's one thing I absolutely love about you is the work ethic. And when I look at your stories, because obviously not a lot of people will know this, but this is the first time we speak.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's been virtually through Instagram and a little bit of
Twitter.
LinkedIn, yeah,
Yeah.
and Twitter. But what I noticed is like how when does I mean you get your sleep, you get your sleep. You tweeted the other day that you forgot about like lunch and dinner, that you worked 16 hours straight. I'm like, how does this guy optimize? Like, how is he working, bro? But I love it, and I just question myself. Like when I see that, I'm like, all right, we got to get back to work. We got to keep working because there's no rest day. So, and I know you talk about that, and I'm assuming you talk about how successful people optimize their days,
Yeah.
the sleeping, and talk talk a little bit about that. Like how did you build that? I want to call it discipline.
Hmm.
How did you build that in order for you to be consistent? and
Yeah.
and when did you feel like, okay, this is a lifestyle that I want to have?
Yeah. Great question. So I think it's like years and
Mhm.
years and years of like, I mean, taking it back to elementary school when I was like in third grade, and then I started getting into like sports. So then it was like third grade. The expectation for my mom was like, do as well as you can in school. You better get good grades. But if you want to play sports, those grades better not fall. You know. So
Correct.
it's like playing baseball, like after like baseball practice on the weekends and after school, as like a 10-year-old or whatever. And
Mhm.
then that progressed to like middle school, where it's like, oh, I started getting involved with student government while still taking my classes, while still playing sports, playing basketball, or whatever. And then in high school, it progressed to like, all right, now you're like doing ASB and you're doing 2 AP courses and you're doing
Okay.
swim and soccer and football,
Mhm.
and like, and then you're driving to and from school. But my drive was like 45 minutes every morning and every afternoon. So it's like, I learned over time to like how to manage my time, how to
Okay.
optimize my time, how to like really focus on whatever I'm doing at the moment, and pretty much block everything else out so that I'm like doing as well as I can on that specific thing, you know?
Correct.
So, and then like progressing to college, I guess I just kept learning and learning and learning. So in college, I was like DJing 3 nights a week, but I was also taking like 16 to 20 units, but I was also like doing, like I was the lead activities person for the
Mhm.
entire university. So I did all the
Wow.
concerts. I like managed a team of like 26 people, um, had 2 internships, professional business fraternity. So like I've
Mhm.
always been like, I grew up doing multiple things.
Correct.
And I guess another thing is in terms of how I do it is I cut out all the fat in my life too. So
Mhm.
I'm not one to like play video games. I'm not one to like watch a ton of sports. I'm
Okay.
not one to like aimlessly scroll on social media. Like I use social media as a tool to like share my message and to learn, you know. So
Correct.
I've optimized these things over time, and I like continuously just learn about myself and practice what I'm learning. Like we mentioned before the call, I
Yeah.
like to learn about this stuff too. So I read books. I listen to people that are really great at these things: optimization,
Yes.
routines, habits, rituals, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and I write about that in the book too. Like that's the second chapter, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the second chapter is game changers. So it's habits, rituals, and routines. So
Okay.
those are the things that if you can implement those and nail them and cut out the fat of your life, then
Correct.
those are going to make the huge difference, because it's like the daily things, the little things on a daily basis, they add
Hmm.
up over time.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, man, just over time. I mean, practice, practice, practice. Once you
Of
get really good
course.
at it, the discipline just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, to the point where I mentioned this to somebody else recently. I was talking to. They asked the exact same question. It gets to a point like where I'm at now. I didn't work out today, and my body
Mm.
feels off.
Okay.
My body's like asking me to work out. I was gonna do like an arm workout before this, just because I
Yeah.
felt like I had too much energy.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you shape your habits and
Mhm.
get your body in a position to where like this is normal. It's
Correct.
normal to like work a ton. It's normal to like work out. It's normal to like
Mhm.
be disciplined and concentrated. And I think I'm gonna close this out with there's a bad perception right now in terms of like working your face off,
Yes, I agree.
and then there's a bad perception of being lazy. So it's like, how do you find on that spectrum, like where do you fit? You
Mhm.
shouldn't be working 100 hours a week. You need to
Yeah.
get your sleep. Like sleep is the number one thing if you want to like perform optimally.
Correct.
But at the same time, you shouldn't be spending 4 hours a day on IG scrolling, scrolling, scrolling.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like that balance.
Correct.
Work enough, a couple of hours, give yourself a 10-minute break, use that 10-minute break to decompress, listen to relaxing music, call
Yeah.
a family member, work
Yeah.
again, get your 7.5 hours of sleep, get your 8 hours of sleep, stay hydrated, all these
Correct.
little things that help you be the best version of you.
Yes. No, I agree because I had trouble with that myself, and that's the reason I asked because I'm barely starting to feel like okay I'm starting to touch and play with discipline a lot more
Yep.
in the sense of okay this is just kind of distracting. Is this the fat I need to trim off?
Mhm.
Is this another thing that I just don't need at all? But don't get me wrong, it's something that's still not fully ingrained in me, and I'm being completely honest, only because you know there's that dopamine, those dopamine hits.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get and I'll call it cheap dopamine because and I'm talking about like social media, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to just get satisfied with that, but then it's like when I catch myself, and it's not too long, I okay, like what's important right now, what needs to get done? And I notice that you have a really a good handle on that because
Hmm.
although you're watching, I feel like during this book process, you're watching a lot of documentaries. I noticed that you're watching
Tons.
a lot of documentaries. You're even like rewatching stuff. You even mentioned like this is like my fifth, sixth time watching this one.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, it's like anything. It's a tool. Anybody else
Exactly.
watching that might get a misperception like, oh, well, you're still watching Netflix. You still have a Netflix membership. But it's like, no, I'm still using it as a tool, right?
Exactly.
And then there might be one day, whatever, leisure, whatever, but you're using it, you're utilizing it different.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like the way you spoke about that, man. And I can't, like I said, I can't wait to read chapter 2 on that one.
No, man, you're gonna love
Um,
the whole book, especially
I
you,
know.
because you love learning. So like, I
Yeah, dude.
compressed, I compressed like 10 books in one,
I love
and
that.
I wove in like my personal stories. I wove in stories of people that we relate to.
Correct.
As people of color.
Hmm.
Um, I'll tell you this: I read 45 self development books
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
and all that was like research for the book that I. At the time when I was like learning, I didn't even know that I was going to write the book. I was just like
Correct.
addicted to like learning from these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But then when it was all said and done, I like was writing a post at the end of last year, and I was like, here are my top 7 books recommendations from the 45. When I was going through the books, I was like, holy shit, none of these are Latino.
Yeah,
Not
man.
not not one single person out of the 45 books that I read was written by a
Yeah.
Latino.
I
There were
remember you
maybe
mentioned that.
three people that were people of color. Like I think David Goggins was one of them, and of course he's a beast.
Yeah. It's
Um,
crazy.
but then it just made me think like we have no representation in
Exactly.
spaces like this. So
Yeah.
like in terms of like on the learning spectrum, if you're trying to reach people like us, younger versions of us, or even just on the
Hmm.
same age, it's a lot easier to understand and to not even just understand, but to be able to relate to the person, you
Hmm.
know?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
like if you and I are learning on like on level 10, 3 hours of audiobooks a day, videos, podcasts. And then like you shift that perception, or you shift that the content, flip it on its head, because then the person that's writing it or pushing it out, you can
Yes.
relate to them,
Exactly.
then it just becomes that much more enjoyable. You're speaking my language.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of like one of the driving forces for the book too. It's like, I want people to want to learn.
Yeah.
Learning is
Exactly. I
fun.
love that. I love
Like
that.
Angela Duckworth's, the person who
Grit.
wrote Grit,
Yeah.
she says that, I don't understand what would make somebody a non-learner.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, and you have to figure out what your learning style is, whether that's
Yep.
audio, video, text, and who you want to get it from.
Yes.
From some people, like parents, sometimes it's nagging. But
Yeah.
when it comes the exact same thing comes from the cool cousin or the Theo or the tia, then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that makes sense. And your parents are just
E-
like, I've been telling you this shit for years.
Yeah.
So it's the same
Yeah.
thing. How do you get the content from somebody who you respect, who you get, who understands you, same culture, all that stuff?
Exactly. And I love what you just said right now, because when you get it from the cool primo or the tia, and I think this comes down to communication. And that's something I've been kind of dabbling with, because to me, I used to think communication, well, everyone says I talk good, or he's well spoken, but I started to say, well, anybody can talk, but not a lot of people can communicate.
Yeah.
And I think I'm getting a sense
Damn, I like
of
that.
yeah, dude, because I'm getting a sense that you compress all these books, all this knowledge, right? And you're communicating to your community and representing us in a space.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that's crucial, man, because it's gonna become a domino effect. You're gonna hit that nerve in someone else, like, holy shit, man, you got to read this book, and then it's gonna be a wave, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's why communicating is really difficult. And I think we haven't even scratched the surface. When you look at the psychology of language, or just communication courses or classes, it's hard. There's
Hmm.
tones, there's different barriers, there's self biases. Like,
Yep.
he could be with his well intent, but I feel a little bit attacked. Like, there's a lot to it, man.
Yeah.
The human is something very immaculate, like very crazy. But I love that, man. I really, really love that. I want to go back a little bit, because I'm very, very curious about uh, a little bit more of your childhood, because you mentioned in high school you had all these extracurricular activities on top
Yep.
of you. You went to college, you still had that same extracurricular drive, and then you also mentioned that you interviewed your mom not too long ago. But even, I'm curious to know, in that interview or any talk outside of that, have you ever wondered, did you ask your mom, like, did I have these same skills or same drive even as a younger kid?
It wasn't a flat out question. It was something that I've reflected on.
Mm,
And I wrote this recently too, that from writing this book, I've learned more about myself in these like 8 months than I have my entire life.
wow.
Because it made me reflect on like my childhood. It made me reflect on like that middle school and high school self. It made me put myself in those positions. And like chapter 1 is like an exercise that I walk everybody through to better understand who they are, their past self, their current self, and their future self. What
Mm,
makes them click, what makes them pissed off, like
mm,
who they are, analyze themselves subjectively, like all facts, looking at looking at their upbringing, looking at their activities and where they spend their time, like where they find the drive and energy from. So I had to. It wasn't a question that I asked my mom or my grandma,
mm.
but it's something that I've learned for myself from just reflecting a ton.
Okay.
And through the exercise that I take people in chapter 1, you'll learn themes about yourself,
Okay.
because I make you ask yourself questions that everybody thinks of, but nobody specifically asks themselves. Things like
Correct.
I don't ask this in the book, but the what I'm trying to get people to the point is like, are you doing what you're doing because you actually want to, or because somebody told you you should, or because society tells you that that's what you should be doing?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
and then by reflecting on your younger self and where you've spent your time in your life, you'll start to find themes. Like
Exactly.
I've always been the hustler.
Yep.
I've when like through the period of my life, my mom, we used to sell shoes at the swap meet.
Mm.
My mom is a hustler herself. She's
Yeah.
had like so many businesses. She has like her own lash business.
Oh,
She's
wow.
been an interior designer. She's hustled like the shoes at the swap meet. She's had so many different businesses. but that's rubbed off on me too, you
Yes.
know, like, and that's something that I've learned over time, but I didn't realize it
Yeah.
until writing the book, or until like recent years, when I'm like, why do I like doing all this stuff? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
It's like, it's right there. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, you know?
Exactly. It was
Uh,
ingrained as growing up. It was subconsciously learned.
exactly.
Exactly. I like that a lot, man. So yeah, I'm glad you explained it that way, because I was just curious to that. Like, well, you got to interview your mom, and I know you probably had a bunch of conversations, but you said it came more from reflection.
Hmm.
That's good, man.
Yeah,
Now,
because the interview itself was more of like, I want to learn the stuff that I don't really know, or that I don't clearly remember as well.
that's good.
Um, and then I would fill the holes with other stories from other people, and like interviews or my self reflections and stuff.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool, and I like the fact that you did that. So I wanna kind of, it's gonna be a little different topic, but now I know your role at Snapchat is in diversity, right?
Yep.
Now, was that your same role at LinkedIn?
Nah, man, nah, not
No.
at all.
What? So okay. So actually, that's interesting. So to start with, what did you do? What was the process of LinkedIn, and what did you do exactly at LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I had three different roles at LinkedIn. I landed my gig at LinkedIn from like a friend who was working there as a contractor,
Mhm.
and so I clawed my way, and I basically like begged him to put me on the phone with the person that was going to be interviewing for the role,
Okay.
and landed the gig. It's all said and done. I landed the gig, and then 8 months later, 10 months later, I think it was, I got converted to full time. So
Mhm.
in that role, I was doing events, but while I
Mm.
was doing events, like recruiting events, I always did uh, a second job on top. So like my 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week was doing on events,
Okay.
but then I was always passionate about social media. So I started doing social media for LinkedIn to target university students, and to show
Oh
them
wow.
what it was like to work there at LinkedIn.
Okay.
Because this is back like 5 years ago, and LinkedIn wasn't as hot of a platform, especially in the younger crowd.
Correct.
So it's like, in terms of recruitment, we were like getting beat by like the Instagrams, the Facebooks,
Yeah.
the Twitters of the world, because those are the hot companies that all the youngins wanted to work at.
Yeah.
But then I started to think to myself, like, this is a dope place to work.
Yeah.
These kids would like want to work here too if they knew what it was like to work here.
Exactly.
So then I started doing like side projects with the social media team and the employer branding team, to show like students what it's like to work there, and that became like more and more and more of work.
Yeah.
And then eventually it became like my full-time job, where I was doing 80% of my time on like employer branding content and projects, and social media, and it's called LinkedIn Life. So you go on Instagram and
Yeah.
you do at LinkedIn Life. That's kind of like the platform that I built out there, with the help of like a team as well. And then like the remaining 10 to 20% that of my time was spent on like still recruiting stuff. So like working with the recruiting team and ensuring that they know how to use content to target their candidates, and to paint
Correct.
the story, you know. As a candidate, you want to know what it's like to work there. Like, I'm switching my careers to come work for this company, I want to know exactly what it's going to be like, paint the picture.
Correct.
And then the third role that I had at LinkedIn was the social media marketing lead for LinkedIn's biggest business. So it's a $2 billion business. It's called Talent Solutions. And
Mm.
Talent Solutions is essentially, if you're familiar with LinkedIn, it's like LinkedIn Recruiter,
Correct.
and the whole suite of products that's related to recruitment.
Correct.
So it's like the moneymaker for LinkedIn,
Yeah.
basically. And
Yeah.
I was doing social media to like promote,
You were the
um,
social media lead on that one?
yeah, to promote
Nice.
not only the product and the services, but also just like thought leadership. So I was
Okay.
speaking to recruiters, HR managers, CHROs. That was my audience.
Yeah.
And then I basically, that was my dream job, is I wanted
Yeah.
to be in social media at a social media company.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, but then I realized one day, like, I like to be constantly uh, I like to be constantly like learning and growing. And
Mm.
not that I wasn't learning and growing in my role, but I had a feeling that like I was always going to do social media and continue refining my social media skills. I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to like flex my muscles in a different area that I was really passionate about,
Okay.
and try it out for a little while. And like and I knew that if shit hit the fan, I could always go back and get a new social media gig. Even if I
Correct.
had to like downgrade as in terms of my career, I could always land another social media gig.
Correct.
But I was like, I've always been, and this is stuff that I've learned from conversations with people who know me very well.
Mm-hmm.
because I was blind to it at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have conversations with my friends, conversations with my managers, and I basically said, like, if I wasn't doing social media, what do you think I would be doing?
Yeah.
And most of them were like, well, it would be employer branding or diversity and inclusion, because you're
Mm,
passionate as hell about it. You're already doing extracurricular stuff at LinkedIn that's related to diversity and inclusion, like the Latino
correct.
ERG, volunteering for like Boys and Girls Club and presentations for students from underrepresented backgrounds and all that stuff.
Correct.
So then I was like, well, shit, I didn't even think about that. Like I just like doing it, but I never thought it could be like a career.
Correct.
So then that's when I kind of started looking, and then I saw that the role at Snap was diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist, and then applied for it, got the gig, and then now I'm like learning every single day. This is not my domain, like
Yeah.
my game is like social media and brand
Correct.
marketing. Like that's the stuff that I know like the back of my hand.
Correct.
Now I'm in like an arena where like I'm being pushed. Like I'm
Correct.
not the top dog,
Yeah.
but I like that.
I
I love that.
that's dude. I'm glad you shared that because I'm glad I asked that, and I'm glad you mentioned that you completely different roles because I was very interested in what you did at LinkedIn and now how you got to Snap, but now that's very interesting because anybody else, no one specific, but maybe they would have liked just a plateau and like, well, I'm gonna be the king here, and then some other youngster comes in and they starts, climbing up the ladder and whatnot. But you like, you know what, you didn't feel, you mentioned you didn't feel like you outgrew it. You just felt like I have some more strengths,
Yep.
right? I want to try something new. So then you got the Snapchat in gig in diversity inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Now, I read a tweet because I'm a little bit I don't want to say ignorant. I'm not too aware of what that role specifically does. And I read a tweet about 2 days ago said that diversity, especially with some things going on now, right?
Hmm.
Diversity just doesn't mean hiring people of underrepresented communities. It doesn't mean just to give them a job, correct? Like there's a lot to it. So I'm asking for, for my own personal knowledge, what exactly does the diversity inclusion team do,
Yeah,
and
that's a
and
good question.
how does that? What's the process behind that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the diversity, equity, inclusion team does a lot.
Hmm.
It's one of the teams at every company or most companies that touches the entire company.
Okay.
So at Snap, our team um, affects recruitment. It affects the product. It affects the content. In terms of like, if you think about a diverse product, is a product that works for people of all different backgrounds,
Hmm.
from the way that you use a product to the content that's on the product to the way that the content is expressed to you or it's shown to you. When you think about people with different types of backgrounds, or maybe somebody that's not that's visually impaired, like how does that
Hmm.
product, like if you've ever noticed on LinkedIn, sometimes it says like be more inclusive with your post by
Oh
explaining
yeah.
what the post is. that's
Okay.
that's diversity, equity, and inclusion being built into
Oh,
the
I
product,
see. Okay.
so it's much more than just recruitment. Recruitment is just one piece of it. Like
I
another
see.
piece of it is like, how do you make your employees feel like they belong at the company? So
I
this
see.
belonging piece, like you work so hard to get people from diverse backgrounds here, and now they make up such little representation.
Mm,
How do you make them feel like this is a safe place for them, and they can express their views, and they can still work hard, and they can bring as much of their whole self as possible to their job?
correct.
So it's there's a ton of different pieces of how
A lot of different
DEI.
branches, right? Like,
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
wow, that's very interesting. And like you said, you guys do a lot, and I just never knew what exactly the how it functioned, right? So I mean,
Hmm.
it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense with the different branches, right? Now, have you how I know like Afrotech is actually fairly big, right?
Yeah, it's
Now,
huge.
Latinos in tech, would you say it's still up and coming, like Latinos in tech, or do you say just still underrepresented, or just not highlighted as often, or what's your take on that?
Latinos in tech in terms of like just the population.
Yeah, yeah, because I know you've mentioned about how being represented in that space, because
Yeah,
it's a space that we're not technically how can we say, like, accustomed to.
yeah,
When we grow up, I want to be a professional soccer player,
yeah.
and then now when I started playing with social media, it's like, holy cow, man,
There's a
like,
whole nother world out there.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and everything you could do at scale, with the internet, and even now we're working on a project that is putting us in tech, and we have to understand this. But
Hmm.
it's like you said, it's a learning process. It wasn't a privilege to us growing up, or something that was talked about at the dinner table, or
Nah,
with
nah,
family
not at
members,
all.
right? It was always, you're good at soccer, mijo, go, go to the academy or something, or anything else, but tech. So what's your take on that? Like, how's that representation coming along?
I think every year there's progress that's made. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily show in the representation of the people.
Hmm.
Like if you look at tech as an industry, tech
Hmm.
as an industry hasn't made much progress in the past couple of years in terms of
Hmm.
like the Latino representation.
Okay.
But I think the Latinos that are in tech or from underrepresented backgrounds, we're all out here trying to like show other people like, yo, this is a very doable career.
Hmm.
You don't have to be technical in order to have a job in tech,
Hmm.
and those are things that we didn't really know, like when I first thought of like working at Facebook, I was like, well, I don't code, so I can't work there,
Yeah.
you know
Okay.
um so I think in terms of like as an industry, the people that are out here doing it, we have a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
um but that's why I tell my story so much too, and that's why I see other Latinos in tech still tell their story and do volunteer work with younger students, and like especially the younger students, because that's essentially the audience that we're trying to reach. When you
Exactly.
talked about like yourself at the dinner table at like 10 to 15 years old, how can we reach those kids,
Yeah.
and at
Exactly.
least show them like, yo, I'm just like you, I'm like twice your age, but I come from your background, I
Yes.
speak your language, and I
Yeah.
work this job in tech at a social media company that you relate to and you understand and you use the product every day. You can
Exactly.
work in this job. You
Yeah.
can work with me. You don't have to have a technical, you don't have to be like a coder or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so just like removing all of those perceived concepts or just things that we think of,
Correct.
that's just like, no, I can't do that because I'm not X or I'm not Y.
Yes.
But a lot of work that we got to do, but every
Yeah.
single day we try to do a little piece of it.
Yeah, man. It's a very. I highly encourage a lot of people. The tech industry, like you said, it might not be advanced in the last few years. In regards to Latinos in tech. However, it's such a good skill to at least be aware of. In any,
Hmm.
there's a lot of skills you could learn that, maybe not even non-technical skills that you could learn in the tech space, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I always encourage people to, if you want to learn something new, try to learn something, or just maybe do some research on the products you use on
Hmm.
your iPhone. Like, I'm reading No Filter, the inside story of Instagram right now, man, and it's like eye opening to see how these tech companies are built.
Yeah.
And most of these people, although they were technical, and most of these stories are very there's a common thread. They were exposed to computers and the internet at a very early age.
Exactly.
you know However, you're going to start seeing a lot of different CEOs, different companies being built that don't have that non-technical side.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ruben Harris. He's CEO and co-founder of what's called Career Karma. His purpose is exactly this: is breaking into the tech industry without, non-technical. And I just saw an interview with a podcast about him, mentioning that some of his users are 50, 55 year olds who are trying to do a career shift. And his boot camp, it's like a boot camp. They match you with the boot camp, a coding boot camp. And that's pretty much their goal. It's like, how can we get some
Awesome.
people that thinks that they're not technical to
Yeah.
get a coding job in the tech industry? So I like to match, connect these things, because there's a greater goal. There's a greater goal, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna, like you said, there's small progress, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Little by little, man.
So yeah, bro. More about the book. How long did it take you to write it, man? How long was like the process? Was there times where you're like, why am I even writing this?
Yeah.
Do I
Of
want to
course.
stop? What was I see you sometimes wake up at 5 a.m. I see you sometimes sleep in till 9. Like, what was the process behind that?
Yeah, man. So it was the most difficult thing that I've done in my life. Like I've done a lot of difficult projects in my life. Everything from
Mhm.
like DJing, some crazy gigs that I said I was going to land and somehow landed
Yeah,
them, to like landing a job in tech. Like I've done some difficult things, but
definitely.
this one takes a cake for sure. It was grueling, bro.
Yeah.
And I think it was difficult because it's not something that I was good at.
Mm,
Like when I tell you I wasn't a writer, and I'm still not a writer, like
yeah.
growing up, and this will put into context. Growing up, like writing was always my least favorite subject.
Mm,
it was always the most difficult thing for me. And I think it was most difficult for me because I learned Spanish and English growing up at the same time.
Yeah.
So when you think about English like as a language, it's
Yeah.
extremely complex and extremely
Yes.
difficult to like practice. So
Correct.
then when you mix that with Spanish, I would mess up my tenses all the time, and I would like sometimes flip words or
Yeah.
like use the wrong word, use the wrong tense, use the wrong verb, adjective, whatever.
Mhm.
And it was really difficult for me writing. So
Mhm.
so my entire like schooling, I hated it. I didn't like reading because it was difficult for me. I felt like I was a slow reader. I
Yeah.
didn't grasp the concepts. um so when I started writing the book, I was like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I hired an editor to help me because he basically coached me through like developing a lot of the copy, helping me up level a lot of the copy too, because my writing is very basic and I wanted to reach a very wide audience.
Yes.
um but but the process itself, it was like about 8.5 months from the
Mm.
day that I realized I need to write a book
Yeah.
to like now, I guess, nine
Yeah.
months
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but in terms of the research, like I kind of mentioned a little while ago, I've been researching this stuff just because I like doing it.
Correct.
I mean, it
Yeah.
started back in like 2014, 2015 when I like
Mm.
learned about the Gary V, like
Yeah.
Gary V on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I was like, whoa, this guy's on another level.
Yeah.
And I just started consuming so much of his content, and particularly his content where he was in, I think it was the Ask Gary V show, and he'd bring somebody on, like a
Mhm.
different, he'd bring on Tony Robbins, he would bring on all these like really famous people, these
Correct.
authors. So I just loved learning about different people
Yeah.
and learning, and then he would break down their stories sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I just started like when somebody who like was an author that wrote like a really cool book, I would like read their book. And
Yeah.
then I like got into podcasting, and then I learned about Short Story Long by Drama, and he does the same
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Like he
I
interviews
love it. Yeah.
people and deconstructs their story, how they got to where they are. So
Yeah.
then I was like just listening on like a on scale, bro, like
Yeah.
so much like
Yeah.
one time I listened to a book in one day.
I
Like
know. Yeah. I think you posted it, man. I'm like,
it was
what?
like it was like an 8-hour audiobook, and I listened to it on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was just like consuming content like left and
Yeah.
right. And I was actually like retaining a lot of it, like because I
Yeah.
was practicing it as I was doing it.
Yeah.
And then like when I realized I was going to write the book, is I was driving down to see my sister in San Diego. I was on the 5 listening to Think and Grow Rich, I think Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon. Yeah.
And then it clicked in my head, bro. I don't know what it was in the
Yeah.
book. And people, when I got the recommendation to read the book by multiple people, because I only read or listen to books that are recommended by other people
Interesting.
who read and listen to books at scale.
Interesting.
Not just people that are like, oh, I read a book here and there or just to stunt, like
Correct. Like
I take
consistent readers.
consistent readers, like
Correct.
people that
Yeah.
you respect their values, or you respect them as people who are like always learners.
Correct.
um so when I was driving down, when I got the recommendation to read the book, somebody told me, like, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but somewhere in the book something's gonna click in your brain for some project that you're working on, or your family, or
Interesting.
your finances, or something. It's gonna click in your brain. I was like, all right, whatever. Like I'm just trying to learn as much as I can.
Yeah.
So I was driving down in some part of the book, and it clicked in my brain. Like it was almost like I was driving like with a blurry, like, I don't know, like
Windshield.
a blurry windshield, or blurry like visor, or blurry glasses, and then
Yeah.
somebody just cleaned the glasses for you. And then I was like,
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
and then
so
it
crazy.
just clicked, and I was driving, and then I thought to myself, like internally said, I was like, I need to write a book.
Yeah.
And then and
Yeah.
then and then I was like, nah, I'm not a writer. So then I started to
Mm,
like talk myself out of it
right away. Yeah.
right away.
Interesting. Right. Interesting. That's very interesting.
Like right away, I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not a writer. Maybe it could be a YouTube series where like I talk to the camera
Mm,
and like teach people what I'm learning. But then I was like, I don't really like being on camera like that, Like I
interesting.
like
Yeah.
interviews, and when the camera's on me as like I'm telling my story, but I'm
Yeah.
not really like a teacher type of person.
Mm,
I've never
okay.
like found value out of that, or I've never enjoyed it as much.
Correct.
So then I was like, all right, YouTube videos, that's out the picture. Then I was like, all right, it could be a blog series. I could write blogs. They're short, they're
Yeah.
easy. I can do like 50 of them and just do like pump out one per week or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I went through a stage where I was reading blogs at scale. Like I was
Yeah.
reading like 10, 20 blogs every day
Yeah.
and just learning as much as I could. But then I was like, how many blogs can I remember that I like found so
Mm,
impactful that really changed my life? And I was like, none.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two here and there where I picked up one thing that I implemented, but like
Correct.
none that were like life changing. And then I
Correct.
started thinking like, all right, blogs, they're great for like that like micro content, but
Yeah.
in terms of like what I wanted to, when I was started to form in my brain, I was like, this is something that I want people to I want this to change their lives.
Correct.
I want this to be a tool. and i've
Yes.
and I've never reread a blog twice or three
Yes.
times,
Interesting. Interesting.
like. And so then it started coming back to the book. I was like, all right, I can't do a blog series. And then I was like, maybe you could do like a podcast series. I already have the podcast up and running. But then I was like, again, that's me speaking to a mic, teaching people. That's not
Mm.
really like my style. I like to
Yeah.
like talk about stories. I like to like share how and why, so that was like, nah, that's not gonna work. I'll keep my podcast series how I have it going. um and then
Correct.
I was like, nah,
That's
it
so
has to be, it
interesting.
has to be a book.
Yeah.
then i was like then I was like because I started thinking about a lot of the work that I do, like outside of my day job. I like to give back. I like
Hmm.
to like teach people. I like to teach my family. I like to like teach younger generations of like things that I've learned. And
Correct.
like sometimes it comes in the form of Instagram posts, sometimes it comes in the form of tweets. But then I was like, how powerful would it be if I spoke to a room of 300 students that are all from underrepresented backgrounds, all from like really bad upbringings, and like I connected with them on a different level to where that they understood and they were listening to me like
Yeah.
extremely coherently. And at the end of the talk, I said, look, you can do whatever you want in your life. All you got to do is like literally follow these steps in this physical book. Every
Yeah.
one of you is getting a book. Here you go.
Yeah.
Read it front to back. Read it twice. Like implement things as you read it. And
Correct.
to have that physical book,
Yeah.
and for it to like be on their kitchen table. And even if
Yeah.
they don't touch it at that day or that year,
Yeah.
but it'll be there, and eventually it'll be in their face enough to where they're like, maybe I'll just pick it up and read the
Yeah.
first page. And if you read
Correct.
that first page, I got you for the whole book.
Exactly.
But like for me to
Yeah,
like
man.
shoot a link at you and say like, oh, I'm gonna send you an email with this blog post. All right, people are gonna read it, and then what? They're not gonna read the next one. They
Correct.
might, like, you're gonna lose 50% of your audience each time. So
Correct.
then I was like, nah, there's nothing more impactful than physically having a paper book and being able to say, here,
Yes.
I don't know, how it's gonna impact you, but it's gonna impact you in one way or another, and to form your goals. Here you go, boom.
Exactly. I'm I don't know. I'm very surprised because it's coming from someone that's been in social media and tech for so long, and we know that that's how you impact people at scale, right?
Yeah,
But when you talk about it, like you said, a blog. The reason I like blogs is because they're fresh, right? It's fresh. It's easy. It's digestible. Whatever, between 5 to 10 minute blogs. But when you write a book that's timeless, and you
timeless,
have
exactly.
frameworks, like you said, frameworks that are, I could pick this up when I'm 24. I'll read it when I'm 24, but maybe when in 5 years, 6 years down the line, like, you know what, I remember that book. There's a chapter in this book. I'm not going to go back to a blog that I read 24
Never.
years old, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
I like that you mentioned that, because it's almost counterintuitive, because we believe at scale using social media and the internet, but we also believe that that physical copy, like you said, even if it's at the table for a year, it's still there, and like you're gonna subconsciously like be triggering your mind, like, well, let me see what this is about. And like you said,
One boring day when you're in quarantine, or you're
exactly.
Sunday afternoon and you're in trouble, you're on timeout, you can't go out with your
Yeah,
friends. That
I
book is going to
love
be in
that,
your
man.
face, and like that's how I wanted to impact people.
And
Another thing is like, I can get a book and make 1,000 pieces of content out of it. I can do 15
exactly.
podcast interviews. I can do 100 blogs,
Yeah.
but it's more difficult to do a book just from like a podcast,
Well, look at you did you read Ray Dalio Principles?
No, not yet.
No.
That's on the list of many books that I got to get to.
Yes, good book. And I'm gonna be honest, I only read half of it. It was the life part. I didn't read the work one. I read the life one. But he built a whole app out of it, and you download an app, and he's sending you sections of the book, and you build off of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's I enjoy the whole process of what was it when you decided to write a book.
Yeah, man. It was
So
not the first thing at all.
I love it, man. I love it. So I have two more questions for you, man, before we end. One question is, I'm not sure if you get asked this a lot, but it's something I've always, not always, but something I struggled with, and want to kind of get your take on it. Um,
Mhm.
you have a significant other, you have a partner, right? How
Yeah,
how do
my girl.
you how do you how do you manage, you're such a hardworking man, bro. You have a lot on your plate. She has probably, her own stuff, right? You guys are both busy people. How was like the agreement, like what I'm trying to say, like, how do you make the relationship work with so much going on?
Yeah.
And I know that's a
Um,
personal question, but that's
People
something I like
people
to
have asked it
ask.
a couple of times.
Interesting. I something I
Yeah.
want to ask because it's something that could be, one of those things where, you start devaluing a relationship because you're so, deep in your interests, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of misconception with relationships. But how do you deal with that, man? How do you handle that?
Well, I'm the same person that I've been I'm 27 for the past as long as I can remember.
Okay.
So like when she met me, I was equally as hardworking and if not doing more at the time.
Interesting.
So like if she's mentioned it, my girlfriend's name is Yessie, and she's mentioned it because people
Yeah.
have asked her the same thing. They're like, yo, how are you with him if he's doing all this shit? Like he doesn't have time for you. And like she's mentioned this to me, like one of the things that she finds extremely attractive to me is
Mhm.
my work ethic. So
Awesome.
it's like you can't find something attractive about somebody, and then once you're with them, you hate them because of it. It's
Hmm.
like that's one of the
Exactly.
main drivers for why we work. And she's equally
Exactly.
as hardworking. So like
Yes.
she pushes me more than anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a partnership. It's a
Exactly.
relationship, but it's a partnership. And once you get on that level in terms of relationship,
Hmm.
then it's a whole different ball game. it's
Interesting.
it's no longer just like, oh, boyfriend girlfriend type of thing. It's like, nah, she pushes me extremely hard, and she's like also there for me. I'm there for her with difficult times.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the time management piece, like it does become difficult at times, but at the end of the day, we know that we're there for each other. If I have a really long day and had to work 12 hours at my day job, and then I still had to do editing for 5 hours, and I still had to like spend time with family, because we both value family a ton, being a
Correct.
Latino, that's ingrained in our culture. If I have a long day like that and I tell her, hey babe, like I really can't talk right now. Like we can try to have a
Mm.
FaceTime or we can try to talk, but like my brain is done. And
Yeah.
we've gotten to a place in our relationship where like that's okay. We give each
Interesting.
other we give each other space when we need it, and we're there for each other when we need it as well. But it's something that's built
Interesting.
over like a long time, and like
Oh yeah.
trials and tribulations.
Definitely,
um
man. Would you say
yeah,
that's like a love language where it's okay, like you said, it's okay to ask for that space and to be honest, like, hey, I don't have the energy that you deserve, so I'm not gonna force it, right?
yeah,
Or like
yeah,
I need to settle down because it sounds like more like a love language. You understand each other at that
yeah,
level. So
yeah,
yeah, man, I wanted to ask that just because that's something that I struggled with, personally, because it was like, well, I have a daughter and it changes the game. It changes the
yeah,
game because now it's like, I was deep in the interest, but now it's like I gotta go extra hard because it's no
yeah.
longer me. But
Mm-hmm.
with the trials and tribulations, it was a lot. But I always knew I've seen successful people. I've seen people who are busting their ass more than I like. I'm nothing. I'm not busting my ass hard enough, but they still
Yeah,
have family of 3 kids and they've been with their wife for the last 20 years. Like it's possible. I know it's possible, but
yeah,
I've never had the opportunity to ask someone that because I still haven't came across someone that I look up to and admire and like it's practicing that. So then,
yeah.
that's the first time I got to ask, but I'm like, I gotta ask Ish this because this guy works his ass off, but he still makes shit happen
And
on
then I
his
guess
personal life.
another a more tactical thing for people that are out there listening that are in a relationship, like it's never going to be perfect, and you like
Correct.
realize, the faster you realize that, the faster that it becomes easier.
Correct.
And like there's a ton of sacrifices that we both make. Like I
Hmm.
mentioned, I cut out all the shit in my life, like in terms of like watching like pointless TV shows on Netflix. Like I use Netflix as a tool. Like when
Exactly.
I'm trying to think, like I don't listen to radio, don't watch the news, I don't watch TV, I don't
Hmm.
watch sports, I don't play video games. Like I cut out all this stuff in my life so that I have more time and energy in my life for the things that I love. And within that bucket of things that I love, yes, it's my fun projects and it's book, but it also includes like family and my relationship.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
like if I would have invested 1 hour a day playing Call of Duty and give that like a 45 minutes of that hour into like my relationship or my family or whatever, and then the
Exactly.
15 minutes I'll like take that to decompress, then that's time that I'm investing in something that's long lasting, not a video game that's going to end and then I'm like, well, I just wasted my life.
Or probably frustrate you just because you can't, pass
Exactly. And nothing
certain
against
boundaries.
people that play video
Oh
games.
yeah.
If that's your outlet of
Correct.
like decompressing and de-stressing, that's cool.
Yeah.
But like the thing that I don't like is when people complain like, damn, I don't have enough time,
Exactly.
damn, I
Yeah.
wish I had more time, damn, you do so much shit. And then the first thing I ask them is like, walk me through your
Exactly.
day, Monday through Friday. What do you do? What do you do on Saturdays and what do you do on Sundays? And then the
Exactly.
moment they're like, well, I'm in this fantasy football league, so I've been watching football every day. And I'm like, well, you
Yeah.
just shot yourself in the foot right there. It's like,
Exactly. It's when
look
the
at your hat.
complaining. It's when the complaining happens, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's okay if that's your way of decompressing, right? But if it's a complaining, like, hey, I don't have time, but okay, well, let's talk about it, right?
Yep.
This
Let's have a
it's
real
like
conversation.
it's like Dave Ramsey says, bro. You gotta live like no one else, so you could live like no one else.
Exactly.
And I love that, man. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And the last question I want to ask you, man, is what is one thing that you want your readers and people who are gonna get this book to truly take away, and that they could utilize it not only when they read that book, but when they close it and they go tackle life.
Yeah. A couple of things. The first one is, when people read this book, I want them to close it and say, holy shit, I can do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whatever it is, I can become a DJ. I can become a bodybuilder. I can become a better husband or whatever in my relationship. I can, like, insert goal. I can insert goal,
Yeah.
do it. I
Okay.
can do that.
Yeah.
Because that's why I wrote the book. I wrote
Yeah.
the book to, like, help people achieve their goals. I, like, compressed all of this research, like
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours and hours of research, just so, like, you don't have to listen to 1,000 hours of research and do all these, like, research studies. You
Correct.
literally just, like, it'll take you 5 hours to read the book, 4 hours to read the book, whatever. Like, it's 200 pages. You
Correct.
read that, and then that's it. You have the keys. And it sounds
Exactly.
cheesy and it sounds like it's a marketing scam, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 7-step framework to achieve your goals. And
Correct.
within that framework, you're going to learn more about yourself than you would have in any other book. You're going to learn the extremely difficult things. You're going to learn the hacks. You're going to learn the long-term strategies. You're going to learn the tricks. You're going to learn the the things that a lot of people perceive one way, but I flip it on its head, because it's like it's like a fantasy, It's
Correct.
like I cut out all the bullshit stories, and I'm like, there's exactly how they do it, you
Yeah.
know. Like,
I love it.
everybody in one of the chapters in the beginning, I'd say this, like, everybody thinks that these successful people that, like, have this endless drive, and, like, they shit rainbows and they're perfect people, like,
Yeah.
they're not. They're
Yeah.
really not. They just have figured out life and see it in a different way, and they use life as a tool to achieve what they want to do best. And
Correct.
within that, they have sets, frameworks, and strategies, and it's just like, when you implement them, and when you first realize this, then you're like, I've been playing a whole different game, you know
Correct.
like,
Correct.
they've been playing, like, I've been playing checkers. These fools are playing chess. They're
Yeah.
playing virtual chess at scale,
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
they're not even in this realm. But then,
Exactly.
once I started to realize that shit, I'm like, the other people need to know this too,
Yes. People like us. People
people
like
like us
us.
need to know.
Correct.
And then, I guess this is a long-winded answer, but
No, no, I love it.
the book wasn't meant for people from privileged backgrounds. I'll say
Mm.
it bluntly. The book, anybody who picks up the book is going to learn, but I
Correct.
particularly wrote it for people from underrepresented backgrounds, whether you're poor, or whether you're, like, had a rougher upbringing, or whether you're just like a Latino or somebody else from an underrepresented group who's always been told no, who's always been overlooked, who's always not been spoken to directly through content, through media, through literally media on, like, TV, or, like, in their profession, who's not
Correct.
been represented. And and I wrote the book for those people, because we don't, like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, we don't have people in the space of
Exactly.
self-development that are speaking to our people.
Exactly.
Like, sometimes when you read these self-development books, and you're like, well, shit, that's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Like, you grew up wealthy, you grew up
Yeah.
with books, you grew up with 10 or 15 steps ahead of me already at
Mm-hmm.
birth. So it's like, how do you create a book and that the strategies are implementable for somebody who doesn't come from a good socioeconomic background? You know what I mean?
Correct.
So the book is like, no matter what your upbringing or socioeconomic status is,
You'll learn.
you can not only learn, but you can do these things. It doesn't
Mhm.
cost you money to do whatever I'm going to tell you to do, you know?
Correct. I love it,
So
man. I love it. I love it, and I can't wait to have it in my hands. I'm even thinking of getting extra copies, man, because I want to give them out to a couple people. Do some sort of giveaway. Nothing too big, but I want to get something because I know a lot of people will benefit from this, and I know
that's awesome, bro. Thank
I
you.
know I know you're gonna keep pushing, bro. You're gonna keep pushing the limits. Like I said, bro, you're someone that I really admire. I've been keeping an eye on you and your stuff, man. There's nothing I personally there's nothing to dislike about you. You're doing everything you do is with a greater intent to help someone, right?
Thanks, man.
So
Appreciate that.
I appreciate, man. I appreciate you being very transparent too. And even I like when you go look at homes, man, and show us what you're trying to get in the next
Yes.
couple of years.
Hey, man. We
Yeah.
there's like I said, there's no reason why we can't.
Exactly.
There's no reason why we
Exactly.
can't.
And I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you taking the time doing this, man. I'm honored to have you as a guest. I know a lot of people will learn from this and go apply, most importantly. And it won't be the last time, man. Hopefully we could catch up again soon,
Yeah,
catch
man.
up
Let's
and
do it.
talk more about it. But that being said, man, to all my guests and listeners listening to this, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And as always, keep striving.
Hey.